our advice to you is to seek it. Seek it with everything that you have. And when you do, the anointing that Keesha was talking about will meet you there and will take care of every need and every want that you have. I just
I'm so glad that you said that, Marcus, because to that person out there who's listening as well, you have to. There are a lot of people who are not going to agree with you. They're going to call you crazy, but there's going to be that one person who's crazy enough to go with you, who don't ask no questions, who doesn't need an explanation, but they 100% believe in you and you're not having a plan, seemingly. They believe in you, period, without an uncharted course, and you're with an uncharted course. And hold on to that person. They're not going to give you any advice. They're just going to be present. But you can do this. I promise you can. And that person who is there for you, they're just going to push you and they don't even know why. But that person is sent by God just for you.
Absolutely. Keesha, as you transition and you're experiencing this new season, what is your prayer every day?
My prayer is for clarity, understanding, peace, and wisdom in every experience. Years ago, before I learned what the relationship concept meant for me spiritually, there was a specific thing. God, do this. God, will you do this? God, can you do this? God, can you do this? And I think we should be very specific in our agenda. I think we should be very specific in our goals. That's the right thing to do, especially when you have somewhere you want to go. But for those of us who are Christians and who do believe in God and believe in His Word, it's already written. It's already done. Look at the world we live in. Look at the gifts. Look at what you guys are doing. Look at doctors, look at teachers, look at lawyers. Those are most often people operating in their gifts. I couldn't be a surgeon. That's it. Even if I went, if somebody paid for me, that's not my calling. That's not my ministry. I have no passion for it, and I have no natural skill and ability for it. But I think where we are thriving as a global, society is when we are passionately and purposefully pursuing those things that kind of stir our core a little bit. Like, we know where we're stirred up. We know what excites us. Nothing about medicine excites me. Nothing, you know where I am most engaged when problems are solved. When people feel good about where they are, who they are, what they're doing, helping people find that peace. You have so many people who are overcommitting and just doing things because when they are settled and idle, they're uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable because there's no real meaning and depth to their agenda. It's just the idea of being busy that keeps a lot of people going. And if I can do anything to help you find that more purposeful life, that more purposeful walk and agenda, that's not just about being busy, but being productive and constructive and having influence, because we're all gifted. Somebody needs all of us, and we miss that. So when my prayer, my conversations, I talk to God throughout the day, but my conversation is very succinct and very clear in that help me see you and where you want me in every experience that I have, which is how I came to look at my breakup in a totally different light. I'm not heartbroken by it, and that may sound strange to him because, the story there, but I'm not, because I see what has happened with it. I see what I've learned about myself, and I saw God clearly in a situation that I'm sure was meant for evil, that was meant to kind of break and tear a person apart. It didn't happen. So I am thankful to God daily. It sounds cliche to some, and I almost always been like this, but I'm just I now have an awareness of what it is. But I'm so thankful for just peace and clarity and just the ability to see God and see good in every experience. And that's essentially, that makes all the difference in the world. You know what I mean? Your perception and perspective about things changes your whole outlook and your whole life experience.
You said something very key, and it was about listening to God. Silence scares many of us. Where do you hear God's voice most clear?
When I am thinking about nothing else, and that's a deliberate practice. It's like when you're in yoga or when you're in any other, high level concentration exercise, it requires a huge centering. Like you have to truly, truly, truly concentrate. Did you take Dr. Boone at Grady? Mm-hmm. Okay. Did he ever do the white ball with y'all?
I think so.
And I remember that. Like, he used to do this exercise where he would have us, like, before an exam, he would have us close our eyes and visualize this white ball. And it was a snowball, I think. And we would take it through all these different stages. So it was whole. It started melting. It was a puddle of water. Once we became deliberate practitioners of that exercise, our test scores went up. And that's just, a very basic, example. But when you start to desire to hear God's voice, I think that's where it starts. Not hear what you want to hear, not hear confirmation of something that you're necessarily feeling or think you should be doing, but truly silencing your whole agenda, your whole plan, and whatever anybody else is telling you, and just saying, I'm listening. And it's not overnight. It's not instant. It's not something that's going to happen like right then. That's why it's important to seek the clarity, to see him daily, to see the experiences daily. Like, let me see you in everything I'm experiencing. Let me figure out what all of this means. And so that's for me, like, all day long. Like, all day long, I'm just I don't even, it's at the point now I don't even have to concentrate on it, because it's almost like a lifestyle shift. Like, we have a lifestyle. Like, we work out, we exercise, we eat right. You have to do the same things for your mind.
Absolutely.
And your heart. Once you get, your heart and your mind in a place of healthy, like, just peace. Just, like, stop being so anxious and agitated and aggravated. Like, it's poisonous. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It'll strip you. They talk about telling people your ideas, and there are certain people you should talk to and certain people you shouldn't talk to, and not everybody's going to support you and things of that nature. And while I find that to be true, and I think that's a decent practice, not to just divulge your entire plan to everyone, I also believe that once you've reached that place of faith and belief in what you're supposed to be doing and what you want to do, it doesn't matter what anyone says. People you care about, that tends to touch in a little bit of a different way. But when you are passionate about that thing or whatever, that plan, naysayers, it just goes in one ear and comes out of the other. Like,
you have to learn how to be unaffected.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it happens. Like, that's why I often say, when people get to that place of discouragement, like I said, we all get tired.
Right. But
do you believe? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't spend a lot of time talking about people who are critical. Mm-hmm. When people are having conversations with me about their plans and what they want to do, the setbacks and all this kind of stuff, my first question is always, do you believe in it? If you believe in it, now let's talk about how you're going to get there.
Mm-hmm. And like you haven't said it, but you've done it. Keep your mouth closed. You don't have to tell all your business, for people to to talk about it and to give you advice, you know, because one thing I found is on this journey is I don't do a whole lot of talking. Mm-mm. And then my friends like, when did you decide to do this? Or you didn't tell me you were doing a podcast, or you didn't tell me, like, girl, like, you know, no shade, but I'm just moving and not doing a whole lot of talking.
Because if I'm talking, then I'm stopping, and I don't have time to stop and slow down. I gotta go. I gotta keep moving.
Not only that, the focus changes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's you might check in organically, or you know, you may, you know, since social media is the way that we do things now, you may post here and there, but the focus is so different. Like, I posted something today about like my August calendar and like phone calls and text messages, and it's just because I've already started it. Like, I've already gotten to a place where, and that's my sanity, and that's my focus. And it's not that people aren't important and that people don't matter, but it requires such a great deal of attention.
Yes.
When you make these sort of shifts, and not everybody will understand it.
Correct.
And I'm my pastor says it all the time, but I was saying it, I think, long before him. I'm free of people. Like, I've been free of people for a very, very long time, and that has given me the space to do what I want to do unapologetically. This is not the first time. I've only had like 2 major jobs. My first job before this one, I resigned from that one also. I was like, oh, okay, it's time. You know, it's time to go. And I remember, she's deceased now, but I remember my aunt came by my house and she saw the cake, the celebratory cake on the table. And she was like, oh, who had cake? And I was like, oh, they, you know, threw a going away party for me at work today. And she was like, going away? She was like, instantly, you found you going to another job? Like, that's how a lot of people think. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm going to the beach next week. That's the first thing. I said, and after that, I was like, I might go to another beach. I was like, I'm definitely going to New Orleans. You know, it was all, she was just looking at me like I was completely insane. And I just remember she said, ooh, like she just, and there was no response. There was no congratulations. There was none of that. And I think about that from time to time, because that could have, if I were not certain about my walk and my life, that could have easily affected me in a different way. And I'm just like, okay, you know, that's not something she agrees with, and that's not something she quite understands. And that's fine. That's totally okay. But I will say it was a difference. There was a difference then, and I was, 29, when I tendered my first resignation. I would say, although it was time, it was still more of an impulse. You know, you start to react to certain things, and there was nothing happening to me specifically, but I care about people, period. It's just the way that I am. And when I see things happening, you know, a lot of people say, well, it didn't affect you. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, if this is the agenda, if this is the morale of this organization, it's time. I'm not in a position right now to have that kind of change on this group. But I can leave. And that's what I did.
You have options.
Yeah, you do. And you do what works for you. That's not everybody's narrative. But as you all have, you know, mentioned to the listeners, it is so important to find your voice in your life. You will hear so many people. You will hear so many people influencing, telling you what you're good at. And that's great. You know, that they'll compliment your skills, your talents, and your gifts. But find your voice in that whole conversation. You know, what conversations are you having with yourself?
Right.
You know, how are you reinforcing that agenda, whatever it may be? Are you just pushing it out of your head? You know, are you just putting it on a shelf? You know, what are you doing? Speak loudly and clearly to yourself, you know, so that you can make some decisions for you.
Well, that's a good segue to my story. Is we've been working all year on helping people write their own narrative, because many times we're living the story that other people have written for us. And today is a new day, and today is a day where it's time for you to begin writing your own narrative, figuring out what it is that you want out of this life. Join us for the conversation.